Hey guys, this is Mrs. Brown, and this is our first math video for my class and for Mrs. Rochelle's class. This is going to go in your interactive notebook, and it's going to be on page 5. It should be on the right-hand side, and what you're going to do on the top is put fractions, just on the top of page 5. And while I'm talking, I'm going to give you some notes and give you some sample questions that you're going to write down, and you're going to write down all that's on the whiteboard behind me as I talk about it. And if you need to pause the video to look at it again or hear it again, that's fine. At the end of the video, there's going to be some practice problems for you to work on. So we've got fractions at the top of page 5 in your interactive notebook. First, we're going to talk about what you do when you're multiplying fractions. And this should be a review, but go ahead and put down A and put down multiplying. And this first problem here has 3/5 times 3/4. When you're multiplying fractions, the only thing you have to remember is to multiply the numerators together and get a new numerator, and then multiply your denominators together. So in this case, we just have to multiply 3 times 3, and that gives us the 9 on top, and then we multiply 5 times 4 on the bottom, and that gives us a 20. So our answer for this problem is 9/20. And with your answer, go ahead and put a box around it that shows that you've got that answer. Pause if you need to go ahead and finish that and get this problem down, and then start again when you're ready to see problem 2. Problem 2 is another multiplying problem, and this time we're doing 6 times 2/7. We need to remember that 6 is a whole number, and it's the same thing as having 6/1. So in this problem, we're going to multiply 6 times 2 on top, and that's going to give us 12. And on the bottom, we're multiplying 1 times 7, and that's going to give us 7 as the denominator. So the answer for this problem is 12/7. So next on your notes, you're going to put the B, and you're going to put dividing, and we're going to talk about dividing fractions. Sample number 3. We got 4/5 divided by 1/2. When you divide fractions, you have to remember to change the division sign to multiplication, and then you want to flip the second fraction. It's called finding the reciprocal. So instead of 4/5 divided by 1/2, it's the same thing as 4/5 times 2/1. And now it's a multiplication problem. So we do just like we did on the last board. We're going to multiply 4 times 2 on top, and that gives us an 8. Then we're going to multiply 5 times 1 for the denominator, and that gives us 5. So our answer to number 3 is going to be 8/5. Here's my answer, and it's got a box around it. So make sure you copy this down in your notes exactly like this. Even if you already know how to do this, go ahead and copy this in your notes. Next, we're going to talk about changing mixed numbers into improper fractions. A mixed number is when you have a whole number here plus a fraction attached to it. So in sample problem 4, we've got 3 1/6, and we need to make that an improper fraction. An improper fraction has a bigger numerator than the denominator. To do this, you have to multiply 3 times 6, that gives you 18. You add the numerator to it, so 3 times 6 plus 1, and that goes on top. And then your denominator in your new fraction is going to be the denominator that you have here. So altogether, what we end up with, 3 times 6 plus 1, that's going to give us 19, and then we keep the 6 as the denominator. So our answer is 19/6. Make sure you box those answers. Next in your notes, and this is still on page 5, you've got part D. This is a review for how you add and subtract fractions. For sample number 5, we've got 2/3 plus 4/3. Well, when you add or subtract fractions, the rule is that the denominator has to be the same. Here's 3 as the denominator. This one has 3 as a denominator, so we're good. All we have to do is take our numerators and add them together. So our 2 plus 4 gives us 6. The denominator's the same, and it just stays the same in the answer. So our answer is 6 over 3, but you have to remember to always reduce your fractions. If you can take 6 over 3 and divide those out, you end up just with 2 as your answer. Most of the time, if you're working problems and you're working on AM, you've got to make sure you check to see if your answer is in simplest form, because that's how they're going to expect you to put your answer. Number 6. We've got 2/3 plus 3/5. Our denominators are different, so we can't add them until we get a common denominator. This really ends up being, we want to take the 2/3, that 3 denominator, and this 5, and see what they have in common. And I picked 15. It would work if you picked other numbers. You could have picked 30, and it would work that way also. But when I take 2/3 and I want it to be a new fraction that's equivalent, I'm putting 15 in my denominator. So to figure out what goes in the numerator, I can think to myself, 3 goes into 15 5 times. So I want to do 2 times 5 on the top. So 3 times 5 is 15. 2 times 5 is 10. My new equivalent fraction is 10 over 15. Then I have to do it to the same thing with here, with 3/5. I've got 3/5, but I want it to have 15 in the denominator. So I could think of it this way. 15 divided by 5 is 3, because 5 can go into 15 3 times. So I have to take this 3 on top and multiply it times 3, and I end up with 9. 3/5 is the same thing as 9/15. If you were to think about it the other way, you could take 9/15 and reduce it, and you would get 3/5. So maybe that will help you think about it. I can go back to my original problem, and now I can change it to my new fractions. Instead of 2/3, I'm going to put 10/15, plus, instead of 3/5, I've got 9/15. So now I'm adding 2 fractions, and they have the same denominator. All I have to do is say 10 plus 9 on top gives me a 19, and 15 on the bottom stays there. So my answer is 19 over 15. Here's another one. Number 7 is a subtraction problem with fractions. Well, I've got 10/8 minus 2/4. The denominators are not the same, so I have to find a common denominator. In this case, with 8 and 4, I can use the 8 as my common denominator. So I need to make this 4 on the bottom change to an 8. 2/4 equals, and I can put 8 down here, and I have to figure out what is going to be the new numerator. 4 goes into 8 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. So my 2/4 equals 4/8. Now this sample, this is easy enough. You probably could have done that in your head and figured out that 2/4 equals 4/8. But the problems are going to get harder and harder, and you need to know the process for finding the answer. So go back to my original. 10 over 8 is still here, 10/8, minus, instead of 2/4, I'm going to use the 4/8. So 10/8 minus 4/8, I've got the same denominator. I just need to subtract my numerators. 10 minus 4 is 6, that goes on top. My 8 stays on the bottom, so I have 6 over 8, and that's a fraction that can be reduced. I can think, okay, 2 goes into both of those. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. My answer, my final answer is 3/4. I can't reduce any further than that, so I've got the box around it to show it's my answer. So this was just a little review about fractions, and it was all on page 5. You should now have notes and sample problems going all the way down page 5. What we want you to do for homework is to, when your notebook is open, if you look on page 4, it should be on the left side, and there should be nothing written there. You're going to practice at the top of page 4, and we want you to work these 4 problems. You need to show step by step how you're going to work them. You need to remember about whole numbers and what the fraction equivalent is, And remember all the things we just talked about in those samples I showed you on the previous boards. I want you to show your work, and when you get your answer, put a box around it, and you need to come to class prepared, whether it's my class or Mrs. Rochelle's, with these 4 problems completely done, with your work shown, and your answers either in a box or a circle. And then you'll get a homework credit to show us your notes and these simple problems, and they'll be your first homework grade. Have fun doing them. See you in class.